Welcome to the Alumni Podcast. We are here with a very special guest. But before we get into that, what's up, Tyler from the Congo and Cairo? Because that genetics
Yep.
test, let everybody know he is
I'm a mutt. I'm from literally everywhere apparently, and so now I'm repping the Congo and Cairo, and you're from Egypt, my brother. So it's all good. That's where we're at tonight.
Dude, he's been honorary Egyptian since I don't know how long, since like middle school when I met him.
Probably.
I'm going to turn this over to T to kick this off, and then he'll kick it right back to me. T, it's yours, man.
Cool. All right. So kind of new way to start the show, Marissa, is just a quick, if you had to describe like your high school, Santa Monica high school experience, 0 to 10, 0 is the most miserable experience, 10 is elated every single day of high school. Where would that rank? And like, yeah, just in terms of expectations, how it actually went, all that. What's your quick rating of high school for us?
I think an 8. Hey, no sir.
8?
I think an 8. Yeah, I mean, we were really blessed to get to go to SAMA. Like looking back at it, what was her name? What was our dean? I remember because I was on student government. She'd always come to us and be like, "You guys have such a rare experience. Like, you're gonna go off to college, meet people who had such different high school experiences," and it's so true. Just like living in Santa Monica is so different, and I meet people now, and they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" I'm like, Santa Monica. They're like, "Oh, I love Santa Monica." But yeah, I mean, I was super involved in everything. I was on cheer, I was on student government, I was president of Circle of Friends senior year. So I was kind of that person who was like doing everything. I didn't really sleep in high school, but so yeah, I think
Marissa, you're our first 8 ever.
I was gonna say she's the highest rated. We've only done this twice, but you're the highest rated. That's pretty good.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not a 10. I'm not like, oh, high school was like the highlight of my life,
Right. We don't trust those people either.
No, right?
You don't want to peak too early. It's not great. But
peaking like 30, 32, 33, that's my goal, right?
Right.
It's like right about now.
So Jim's going to take you into the way back machine here with the long way.
Okay, I'm ready for 2010. Are you going to drop the
experiment, whichever way it goes here?
Let's set the tone, all right? Let's take you all the way back to June 2010. A fateful day where you graduate from high school. The Black Eyed Peas are hot on the radio. The Lakers are playing, and no one is paying attention to our graduation whatsoever in the crowd. Apparently, people were holding up signs of the score during the playoffs. Dr. Hugo Pedroza sang us a song. What was it called? La Cucaracha? I don't know.
Probably. I don't know.
I don't remember. A couple other people performed, and your name gets called, and they don't give you a degree. No, they don't give you that diploma you worked so hard for. They give you a piece of paper, and you picked up your degree afterwards, or at grad night, I think.
And we weren't even allowed to throw our hats. That was BS.
Yeah, they didn't want us to throw.
We had to throw like carnations. I was like, excuse me, what?
I think I still threw my hat. I don't know why. Because it was just the right.
Because you're a rebel.
Right.
Yes, thank you. And they call your name. You shake his hand, and the next morning you wake up after grad night, or you probably fell asleep during the day. I don't know. I did. And 13 years later, you're sitting on a podcast with me and Tyler. The time has went by. There's different songs on the radio that I can't keep up with. The Black Eyed Peas are no longer a thing. And we just want to know, like, what your path was like from basically the time of graduation all the way until now.
Wow, that's crazy thing about graduation. So I actually graduated early. So I graduated in January. I was like very done with high school, which I think is funny because I was like, I had waited all 4 years to be a senior on cheer and a senior in student government and like all these things. But I was just graduated early and I moved to Oregon. So I did come back for graduation, but I didn't go to grad night. Okay. Yeah, I was just an odd. I kind of was like, I'm done. I really want to be ready for college, and was dating a guy in Oregon at the time, so that was part of why I graduated early. Can't believe I did that still, but so yeah, graduation was great though. I mean, I drove back with my mom and my boyfriend from Portland, so that was an interesting drive and like just seeing everybody. But yeah, so I moved to Oregon in January, stayed in Oregon for 9 years, and then I'm now in Austin, Texas. I went to Oregon State, and the funny thing was, so Ryan Katz went to Oregon State, and he graduated early to play football. So when people saw that I was like Oregon State stuff, and I was graduating, I was like, "Oh, are you doing a sport?" I'm like, "I'm not graduating early for cheerleading. Like, what, you know?" So people always thought that. I was like, "No, I mean, I'm pretty great, but I'm not that great." But yeah, so went off to Oregon State, loved it. I don't have any complaints about my undergrad life. I was in a sorority. I dated this thing by all of college. Was still working with kids with disabilities, kind of like I was in high school, circle friends. And I had started college, actually pre-med, wanted to be a developmental pediatrician. And then like sophomore year, junior year, my faith has always been important to me, but like got more important to me. And I was like, oh, I can't believe. Sometimes you look back on decisions, you're like, why did I do that? But I was like, I can't be the wife and mom I want to be and the doctor I want to be. So I dropped pre-med. It was just human development. So graduated with like my bachelor's in early childhood development. Always thought maybe I'd do like nonprofit management. And then senior year, I ended up working at the Boys and Girls Club because I wanted like nonprofit management experience. And they put me in this like kindergarten program and asked me to run it. And I kind of fell in love with education. I had never planned to be a teacher. I personally like didn't love elementary school or like got through school, got good grades, but it was never like I love school, which is funny because I gave you guys an 8, but you know. So yeah, so then I actually went off and I taught on military bases. So I was in Key West for 6 months and then Germany for 6 months after undergrad, and then applied to grad school, got into grad school, went to grad school for 2 years in Portland, got my master's in special ed, and then taught for 3 years in Oregon, and then moved here, and then the pandemic started.
Wow, what a journey.
That's distinct.
There's so much to dissect in that like we'll just start at the beginning of undergrad. Okay. You are a social butterfly. We can tell. I mean,
I was rated most spirited with Danny Wacker, you know. So
Danny Wacker, we gotta get Danny Wacker on.
We'll try to get
Danny Wacker. Yeah. Oh man, that'd be great.
That'd be pretty awesome. But definitely very spirited indeed. A lot of people come on here and they're like, undergrad, dang, I had trouble making friends. I don't really know, like I didn't know very many people. But you seem to have like gone in there and took it by the reins. Do you have any advice? Like, how did you do that? Like, it seems like college was a good experience for you.
Yeah, so honestly, I feel like I struggled a little bit with like when I graduated early, I went and I lived with my mom. My mom lived in Oregon, and I had like nothing to do for 9 months. And so then like all my life revolved around this 19-year-old boy and like what he was doing and my few church friends from Bible camp. So I worked at a Bible camp every summer in Oregon. Nice. And that's how I ended up meeting this guy, and then, you know, crazy 18-year-old hormones. So I didn't do a lot, and that was really hard for me. And it ended up causing me to have like a lot of anxiety, just because I didn't really have my own life at that point. And I had literally at 18 put like all my eggs in this 19-year-old boy's basket. You know what I mean? But when I went off to college, I mean, I got lucky that I was in like a really social dorm. I did join Greek life, which I didn't end up doing all 4 years, but I do think it was a great experience to meet people. I'm not like the biggest drinker, so I was kind of like the first one back to the house. Only child, so sophomore year we had to live in the house. So living with 55 girls was like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm like very open, and you know, being on cheer and other things, like, yeah, you walk around naked, and there was girls in the house who were like not okay with that, or just it was just not my thing living with 55 women. So yeah, I was like the first one back to the house. I was like the one who helped everyone who was like drunk get in the house. Half of our sorority was tiled and half was carpeted, and if you threw up on the carpet, you basically had to pay for the entire level to get cleaned. If you threw up on the tile, you were okay. So like I was kind of known as like the one who got everyone to the tile. Like, I'm backing out, but you didn't want you to have to pay to get all the carpet clean.
Honestly.
Right? But yeah, I mean, I went out, I did stuff, but like I even though I'm really social, I've kind of always been a homebody as well. Like even in high school, I remember people. So my dad was he wasn't around a lot. My dad is in the movie industry, so he would leave for like weeks at a time, and I would just be home alone. And so even though I didn't get into a lot of trouble in high school, like people would always come pregame at my place. But I would stay home and like literally watch like HGTV. Like I don't know what it was, but even in high school I was like that. So like I remember I think they were going to the teen club and someone said they were going to be over my house and their mom came and was so mad at me. It was a girl on cheer. I'm not gonna drop names, but just yeah, but I've always been like just like not a goody two shoes, but like I just like didn't want to get in trouble. Like what's the point, right? Like I don't know. So
we're like that too. Like me and Tyler are both like that. We don't we stay out of trouble.
Like with drinking, I'm like, okay, like I can have a good time, but why do I want to spend all this money and then wake up with a hangover? Right? Like I would much rather have a couple glasses of wine, feel really great, and go to bed, and then also not spend like $100 on an Uber or something.
Right.
It's just economical.
Yeah, it's
smart. But so yeah, so in the sorority, still dating that same guy in college. He ended up going off to Afghanistan. That was like really hard for me. But sophomore year, like my faith just got more important to me, and I ended up leaving the sorority. So I got sick sophomore year. Oregon has like crazy allergies, and Corvallis has the highest pollen rate like anywhere in the U.S. or something. And so you go from Santa Monica where there's like seawater and there's like nothing to be allergic to Corvallis, and my tonsils were swollen. Like it was so bad. And so they took out my tonsils over Thanksgiving break, and I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Like I'll come back. And I just had a really hard recovery. And so I had to take like a medical withdrawal from that term. And the sorority basically was like, well, you can DA, which is like disassociate, or you can still come to chapter every week. And I'm like an hour and a half away from Portland. So I ended up just leaving the sorority. And it was at the time, like it felt like the end of the world. But it was a blessing because once I lived in Portland for the 2 terms with my mom, and then I went back to Corvallis. But I got really involved in my church and just like kind of found myself a little bit more. Yeah, then went back and I was involved on campus, but I was not involved in Greek life. I was involved in kind of like there's kind of like a Christian sorority and fraternity, so I got really involved with those. But yeah, you know, I college was, and we grew up, like I said, we grew up in such a rare spot. Like Corvallis is such a college town, and it was such a culture shock. I lived with a girl junior year. Her boyfriend was a professional hunter, and so like I came home one day to a deer like hanging on our porch, and just things like that I was like so not used to. Or I remember that was that Obama's re-election? Trying to get her to go vote with me, and her basically crying and saying like Obama was going to ruin the world in 4 years. And I was like, girl, clearly don't understand politics if you think one man has that much power, but 2, like, no, he's not going to. Just things like that. Like very Corvallis was kind of the more conservative between U of O and Oregon State. Like a lot of the people I know from our graduating class, they all went to U of O, other than like, what was his name? There's one other, Connor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who did go to Oregon from our class?
So like who went to Oregon was like Selena, Wiley. What was the tall guy with the big hair? Oh, well, I know that's really descriptive. He was always with Tate, and he was on basketball.
Cephas?
Oh.
Yes, I think it was Cephas. Okay, so there was like a little group, and like when Selena needed a ride from the airport, I'd like drive her because we were on cheer together and all those things. But yeah, I mean, Oregon State and Corvallis was just a rude awakening. Like we didn't have a Target. If you're in Washington, you know Fred Meyers. We had a Fred Meyers. You know, the best. But yeah, I mean, it was a really different experience than our high school experience. And I do feel lucky that I got to experience like something totally different than Santa Monica. Just growing up in a big city where, you know, everything's happening compared to being in like a little town.
Yeah.
Had it not been for your boyfriend at the time, do you think you would have went out of state? Or do you think you would have?
I really wanted to be in Oregon at that point, but I had gotten into like a ton of UCs. Like I got into UCLA, and obviously I wanted to do pre-med at that time. Like I probably would have gone there. But then at the same time I think about like, why would I wanted to be that close to home? So my mind was made up on Oregon. Either way, kind of like, and when I decided to graduate early, I didn't even think it was even a possibility. And they're like, oh, you have so many credits, because I did so many classes at SMC. Because like we're not slated to do a sport all 4 years or do like student government all 4 years. So My senior year, I had like academic classes in the morning, and then after lunch, it was circle of friends. I had a class period for that. Student government, I had a class period for that, and then cheer. So I had to do a lot of classes at the community college just to like get the classes and I needed. So I had so many extra credits. And then I would go to Oregon like every other weekend to see him. So I actually had to do Saturday school to graduate on time. So I'd missed so many days. And it was like the Saturday before the term was over. And I remember they were like, you can go clean bathrooms or you can do homework. And at that point, I was like, everyone went to clean bathrooms. Like, why would you not like study for your finals?
Right.
Right. Like, me being in Saturday school was such a weird experience for me. I was like, so not. I was like trying to tell everyone, I was like, I'm not here because I did anything wrong.
Right.
I was so worried that people would like judge me and like these are I don't know. So, but yeah. So my birthday too was actually the same weekend that I graduated early and moved. And so do you guys remember Blakely? She was really good friends with Emma. She was on cheer. So they threw me a going away surprise party, which was super fun. But that was that weekend. Then I just flew off and peace.
I think the only other cheerleader I remember was Sherry. Do you remember Sherry?
Sherry, okay. Yeah. She's married with like 2 babies now.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's crazy. Like I ended up kind of going through everyone who follows this page just to see like where people are at.
Yeah.
And I'm like, everyone looks like such an adult, and I feel like I'm not an adult yet. You know what I mean?
You understand.
I feel like I should be 25 or 26. Like that's how I feel. I don't feel 32. I'm gonna be 33 next month. Yeah. So I was showing my students The Grinch, and I saw that it was 2000, and I was like, oh my god, that was 20 years ago. Because I remember my dad did that movie. So like I remember like when that movie was in my life. Like it's just really crazy to think like we're old.
I'm like that. Elf came out in like 2004, and I'm like, wow, I've been watching that every Christmas for 20 years already. Like, how is Elf that old? I don't even know.
Right?
That's a mind. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's, like, and to think that our 10-year, I feel like when we were younger too, we would I would always make iMovies and like slideshows for everybody, all my girlfriends. And now looking back, I'm like, that's basically what TikTok is. But I'm so glad I have all those random videos that we made with like really sappy like Green Day music behind it. Like one day we're gonna watch this, and you know. And I mean, I don't have a DVD player, but I have it still. So
you should put those on TikTok.
I should. Actually, I found a video of Raphael, me, and Sam Blyberg, who was like my high school boyfriend, doing I think it was 8th grade, like my humps back with the Mac that had like it was the first Mac that had the built-in camera with the photo booth. So the quality is so bad. And I'm wearing like a shirt with 2 tank tops underneath, like everyone did in like 2006, 2007. And I posted that. I was like, oh, this is gold.
Right.
Like, this is like, thank goodness I was on Facebook early because I have all these random,
Yeah. That's nuts. Okay. So you do your college. You start off as pre-med. You switch over into education.
Well, human development. So like I wanted to be a pediatrician. So my major was biology. My minor was chemistry. And then I had another minor in human development. That was kind of like what they said. They wanted pediatricians to be on that. And so then I just dropped the bio. And honestly, it's really weird because like Gen Chem killed me. Stoichiometry killed me, which makes no sense with like basic algebra. But OChem, I loved OChem. So I was really close to having that chem minor anyway, but I just was like, at that point, dropped it all and was just human development major. So I think my actual degree is early childhood development, not education. Oregon's one of those states where you actually have to do either like a master's or a 5-year degree to get a teaching license. Not here in Texas, they hand them out like candy. So I would have had to do a 5-year degree, and Oregon State actually didn't even offer a degree in education. Oregon did, and Oregon is actually really for autism studies and research. They're like really well known in the education world for like autism. Wow.
So you get that child development degree, and then what did you end up doing afterwards? I think you said that you taught a little bit on military bases.
To Germany?
Yeah. So I did a program, and I was on 2 different military bases. I was in Key West, Florida, on a naval air station for 6 months, and then Germany for 6 months on Landstuhl, which is like where the big military hospital is. And then like halfway through Landstuhl, they moved me to an R&R base, and I was living the dream. I was like 45 minutes out of Munich in this little beautiful town called Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is like when you think of a little German town, it's like ski resorts, all that. So I did that, and then I started grad school at Portland State.
Nice.
And that was a 2-year program, full time. So I got dual certified for special ed and general ed, and I got my master's of science in special ed.
Wow.
So that's what I did, and then I went into teaching.
Very nice.
Yeah.
At what point, I know like you started off in bio and minor and everything, but at what point did you really realize, okay, like I want to be somewhere in child development and I want to teach? Like, when did that like actually come to fruition in your mind?
So that was my senior year. I was working at the Boys and Girls Club when they asked me to do that program, right? Because I had originally wanted to work at Boys and Girls Club to get maybe experience with like grant writing or some type of nonprofit management. And then I was like, I actually really love this, like lesson planning and being with little kids and all of that. And I had always wanted to do, the reason I wanted to be a pediatrician was I wanted to do developmental pediatrics. So I'd always worked with kids with disabilities, like started out in 5th grade, so I didn't want to run the mile. So I became like a buddy with this girl named Sarah Paris, who was our graduating class. I actually walked across the stage with her, but she's the whole reason this all started. Was I was lazy in 5th grade, didn't want to walk the mile. They like needed a buddy for her. So then went off to Lincoln. Was like 8th grade year. That was my elective. I was a student, whatever they're called, like an assistant in that class. And then when we went off to SAMO, I was on Circle of Friends all 4 years. Like vice president junior year and president senior year. And so I knew I wanted to work with that population. I just didn't know like what capacity I wanted to work with that population. So I thought nonprofit management, like Autism Speaks or like Down Syndrome Association. And then I just was like, I want to be in the classroom. And so then I applied to grad school, got into grad school, and I was like, okay, that's it. And then the rest is kind of history.
You know what's crazy? Yeah. I was actually in Circle of Friends too. It's like when you're paired. Yeah.
I mean, when looking at like different schools, it really is like such a cool program because students with disabilities like actually being included in a meaningful way really doesn't happen in a lot of schools. And so like I think about some of the students who really we did events like every month and we had parties, and I think about how meaningful that was for a lot of them and how cool of an experience and a program it is. And, you know, the woman Barb who started it ended up leaving, like, I think it was my sophomore year to kind of start it as a nonprofit. So they've been able to replicate it at like different schools. And there's schools in Oregon, Washington, all over California, who have the same model, which is really great.
Yeah, it's an amazing program. I remember my buddy to this day. Like,
really
awesome, really smart.
Did you say Mika?
Yeah.
I love Mika. I think we're Instagram or Facebook friends.
That's pretty awesome.
I love Mika. Yeah.
Wow. That brought me back like crazy because I completely forgot about that program altogether.
Well, Tyler being OT, like he gets it. Like the woman who started was an SLP. So it was her way of kind of getting minutes in and getting some of those kids like social skills minutes in like a real organic way, which is really cool. Because the whole point of like all of those services are to get kids ready to be in the real world and to get them social skills. And like what better way of doing it in the real world than like sitting in a room with other kids where like, tell me the social situation. What would you do in this experience? You know?
So when you look back at your path and you kind of like, you know, make a decision on your career, do you feel like there were signs along the way that you were going to reach like where you reached, or do you feel
people when I signed up for grad school, like my mom and my dad, many people were like, we totally saw this. I was like, well, why didn't you tell me that when I was pre-med, right? And like I had wanted to be a doctor my whole life, so my parents were like, do what you want. And I'm an only child. My parents are 21 years apart. They're like very different. So I was really blessed with parents who are kind of like, do what you want, like, you know, for everything. Like even graduating early or like my parents split up when I was little. So like I kind of chose where I wanted to live. If I wanted to be in Oregon or California. And yeah, they kind of let me. I wasn't a bad kid. They got lucky, you know. Like I could have gotten into so much trouble. I tell my dad that now. I'm like, Dad, I could have gotten into so much trouble. Like, you're
What do you
lucky I
think-
wasn't. I mean,
Yeah. What do you think prevented that, decline potentially in your life? Obviously your life could have went down either path.
I just think I didn't want to be that person. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
16 and pregnant was so cool when we were in high school, and I think about how like disgusting that is now.
Right.
I mean, my dad was not around. Like I could have been having like sex parties at my place, and he wouldn't have even known, or even cared, probably. You know. So, yeah, he just got lucky with me. I tell him that. I'm like, you got so lucky with me.
You have to remind him every time you do.
I could be better still with like budgeting, and he tells me that. But like, I'm like, okay, if that's the worst thing about me is that like I don't know how to like save money. Like I think we're okay. You know.
Yeah, right.
So you spent a lot of time in Oregon, and then you moved to Austin. And I'm just curious as to like what founded that move, like why, and what were your experiences like in Oregon?
I loved Oregon. I never thought I was going to leave Oregon. Oregon is beautiful and amazing, and Portland is like such a fun city. At least it was pre-COVID. It's changed a lot, sadly. But so I had my dream job as a life skills teacher, and out of school I got my dream job, but I had a male assistant in my classroom who was twice my age, twice my size, chauvinist. Like he was like, I don't care if you have your master's, I know what I'm doing, all this stuff. And so I struggled with that relationship for a while, and then he started sexually harassing me. And so I didn't say anything for like a year. Then he started talking about the students in inappropriate ways. And like we had kindergartners with like Down syndrome and autism, like kids who couldn't advocate if something had happened. And so that's when I brought it up. I was like, like I don't care what you say to me, like still very inappropriate. We have to work together. But like when you start talking about my kids that way, like, and so the district ended up after like a 12-week investigation, they ended up letting him just resign. And that means he can go to another district and it's not on his record. And I was just kind of disgusted by that. And like I'm all for unions because here in Texas we don't have any of that, but he was a union rep for the like assistants, and so I think that was part of it. He had like a lot of protection when he shouldn't have had it, and I was like kind of devastated because that was my dream job, and I could have gotten a job in any other district because like my principal, my sped director, everyone was like, "We love you, we don't want you to go, but we understand." But it was like my home. Like I felt really weird going to a district like the neighboring districts. And I'm kind of an all or nothing person. I'm like either all in or I'm all out. And so I always thought that I would move to South Carolina because Raleigh, Chapel Hill has a really good autism PhD program, and a lot of like the big autism research comes out of there. And I was like, I kind of thought that was what my path was. But everyone was talking about how Austin is so cool, and Austin's just like Portland. And my little in the sorority was having her bachelorette party in Austin. I had never visited, but I was like, well, let me just see. So I applied for a job at UT, and it was actually an autism awareness coordinator. And then my heart was set on that job. And then I started looking at Austin. I was like, this is a really cool city. And so I never heard back from the job, but I decided to still move. I ended up actually applying for my job on a Sunday. They called me Monday. I interviewed Wednesday. I got the job Friday. I moved 9 days later.
Oh, wow. My gosh.
Yeah, it was really fast. Packed up a U-Haul. My cousin happened to be on summer break and drove with me and like helped me unpack, and it all fell into place so well though. And like for me, as like I said in my face, really important to me, like it felt like a God thing. Like it just happened so seamlessly, like even just the apartment and like the support I got when I moved here. So yeah, it felt right, and it was good because even though like I'm a really independent person, like in Oregon through grad school I lived with my mom, and I think that it was just good for me to really be on my own. Like my toilet flooded like a week into living here, and I didn't know what to do. Like just like life skills that a lot of us don't know, like adulting, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I've been here for 4.5 years, and I love Austin. I do feel blessed that I was here during the pandemic and not in Oregon, because Oregon was on lockdown so long. And I'm very liberal. I was all about wearing our masks, not opening. I was pissed because we went back in person really fast. Being a special ed teacher, like my kids were the first kids to go back. Like looking back, I do think it was the right decision. I hate Governor Abbott, and I hate saying that, but it was the right decision for my students and for myself, I think. So I was only virtual or remote in the spring when we were all on lockdown, and then I went back in person. And people were acting like, I mean, people who are like in clubs in Austin that summer. Like Austin really didn't, and
Sure.
Austin's like very blue compared to the rest of Texas. So I lived in the suburbs of Texas back then in Cedar Park, and oh my gosh, it was crazy. We had parents like literally like hitting teachers because their kids were in masks. And like very, very purple. It's a very interesting county.
Yeah.
You're 20 minutes from downtown Austin, you know, but just completely different culture. So that was interesting, and that was a really weird time to navigate, like being in the classroom and being a special ed teacher. It's a very hands-on job. I couldn't do it remote. I mean, I had a student who had cerebral palsy, visual impairment, and was nonverbal. So how does he, you know, access remote learning?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so basically I kind of just chilled for like those 9 weeks. I had a lot of the families who were like, well, send us YouTube videos or send us this, but they didn't have the capacity to like actually help their child because it was so much more hands-on than a child in the general education population. Or like I went to school and got some of their activities that were really hands-on, but you know, it was just not that direct teaching. So that was weird, but I kind of looked at it as like a forced sabbatical because I'm not someone who slows down. And I got a dog, not hubcap. I got a senior dog Max, and so like it was just walking every day. And I got on keto, and I like was making everything from scratch. Like I made bread, but not regular. I made keto bread.
Oh,
I know.
Everyone did sourdough.
I did a sourdough starter. No, it was keto bread, so I didn't have to worry about sourdough starter. Yeah, so I honestly loved like lockdown time. I kind of like I made my patio into a little oasis because Target was still open and Home Depot was still open. So I went and got like all these plants and lights and read like every book I could and just looked at it as a forced sabbatical. So yeah, and like I said, Austin was open and we have so many outdoor activities like on the water. My friend had a boat, so we like luckily I had a lot to do that summer. And that was my first summer in Austin. It was the COVID summer. So but so many people moved to Austin during that time. Like Austin is such a transient city that there's all these groups. There's like Girls New to Austin on Facebook and all these different groups. And so I was able to meet friends that way and then also just like fellow teacher friends. And my first year teaching, I had an assistant who was like the mom of my age, the age of my mom. And so she kind of took me under her wing. And like I spent Thanksgiving with her, and she was the one who had her family had the boat. So they really took me under their wing. And I think that was such a blessing being here because I had like a mom figure, even though I was on my own. Like when I was really sick, like she brought stuff over to me. And so yeah, that's and then August 2021, I get in a really bad car accident. I was tired and my car hit a tree and my car flipped and caught fire like instantly. And really shouldn't be alive because my car was completely up in flames by the time the fire truck got there. But my best friend, she got me out. So like I was in a Subaru, like super safe car. They're like every car in Oregon, like every third person has a Subaru. You know, you're from Washington.
Yeah, I used to have a Subaru, not today, but
so it kept me very safe. I had 4 airbags go off, but I was like kind of knocked out. And her front airbag did not go off. And so she, even though her face ended up being shattered, she was like awake enough to get us both out of the car. And so with my job, so I ended up having to get double knee surgery. Something like went through both my legs, and I had to get a tendon ligament repair and like all this other stuff. And we really are so blessed. So neither of us were burned or like anything. But I was stuck home during that time, like really thinking about my life and like, do I want to be in a profession where like I kill myself? Like I was literally so tired from teaching and all of that. And I don't even get like any disability, unemployment, right? Because teachers, we don't treat our teachers well. I obviously was living off a teacher salary, didn't really have savings. And so, yeah, I was stuck home for 12 weeks because I was on blood thinners, and in my job, I get bit and hit a lot. And they're like, you can't come back until you're off blood thinners. And obviously, if I can't walk, I can't do my job. You know, I was a special ed teacher. So, and I had started a social media when I was in grad school called Sparkles and Sped because I felt like as a special ed teacher, I couldn't find all the cute Pinterest stuff that all the like general ed teachers could find. So I made an Instagram all about being a special ed teacher, and it kind of took off. because it was really niche. It was all their special ed teachers. And then right before my car accident, I posted like a random picture. There's this place in Austin called El Arroyo, and they have really funny signs. And they had posted one that said like, I saved $273 by not going to Target for toothpaste. And like that's every teacher in Target in the summer. And I posted that, and it like went viral. And so even though I had had a large following before, my engagement went up. And so when I was stuck home, I had all these brands reaching out. And so I really started like being like a quote unquote influencer. I hate that word though. And that year made a lot of money doing that because I was so niche. Like a lot of education brands are like, okay, we know that most people following you are teachers. We want to, but at that point I was like 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. Cause I was like, I don't want to stay in education if this is kind of what's going to happen in my life. And so I actually started looking at marketing jobs, social media jobs. And we have something called South by Southwest here in Austin. It's like this big, crazy, So they do South by Southwest EDU the week before, and I got a media pass, and I went and I researched like what ed techs were there and who was hiring, and I ended up linking up with a startup, and ended up winning them over, and so they offered me a full-time job. And so when that school year ended, I started doing their marketing and their social media full time, and I loved it. I was like. But going from being a special ed teacher where your schedule is like every 5 minutes to having like no schedule was so hard for me. And I'm used to being on teacher summer. So that first summer, like I was technically working for them, but I was like, it's my teacher summer. So I struggled a lot. And then we were a startup, and I loved the product, but our CEO just didn't really know what he was doing. So last October, we went to Germany for Bookmess, which is the world's largest book fair. Like all the big book companies spend and we spent a ridiculous amount of money to have a little booth. We get back and we find out that like basically we have no money left. And I was the only one actually on payroll. Everyone else just got stopped because they were all like retired CEOs. Yeah. So he was like, sorry, we can't pay you anymore. I was like, cool. Yeah. So my world kind of came crashing down. But so like last year was a really hard year. But I feel like I grew so much as a person because so much of my identity had been wrapped up in being a special ed teacher, especially because my social media was about that. Like it was like I taught, and then I got home and I did more teaching stuff. And I feel like it's normal for us to kind of be like, hi, my name's Marissa, I'm a teacher, or like, hi, I'm Jim, I'm a lawyer. Like that's just, we kind of define ourselves by our professions. And then being a teacher is its own culture. Like there's just such a like inner culture within it. And so I struggled with that, but I really tried to like, it gave me time to figure out what I really wanted to do, because I did have social media money coming in and I had some savings. And so I would just do like odd things here and there. And then our session started, our 80th legislative session started, and it's Texas. So all the crap you hear is like real, you know? And so I started going down to the Capitol, and I guess I always felt so far from it, especially because I've always been involved in like interested in politics, but it was more federal because Oregon and California, like I like pretty much what's going on there. There's not a lot where I'm like, and both of those capital cities were anywhere near where I lived. And so it was really easy to go down the Capitol, and there's this young guy who was a teacher who's like my age, and he's a state rep, and everyone loves him. And he had called all these teachers to come out, and that's kind of what got me started in it. And then every Tuesday I was down there when our public education committee met, and I started volunteering, and then kind of got in that little circle. Was that our thing?
No, that was my Alexa.
That's the legendary soundtrack. You'll know when that's on.
Okay. So, and then I just started getting really interested in politics, and we are one of only 3 states that meets every other year, our legislative session, which is so crazy because we're the 9th largest economy in the world. So like right now we're in interim, and so there's not a lot of jobs. And so I've just been applying. So I didn't plan to go back to the classroom, but we are in such a teacher shortage. I actually got recruited back to the classroom through LinkedIn. And I'm on like a special contract where I just give them my 2 weeks and I can leave, and my pay is much higher than a regular teacher. Like it's a great situation for me. It's kind of crappy for the other teachers. But so I don't get paid in the summer or anything like that, like I would as a normal teacher, but it's nice because the pay is higher right now, and I can leave. And I kind of told them, like, I was really honest. I was like, my long-term goal is to be down at the Capitol or working for a nonprofit.
Right.
So I just want you to know that. But yeah, so now I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. I've been applying for some jobs, and I'm just kind of waiting for the right job, because I applied for some jobs that I'm like looking back, I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't get that job, because I think at the time it sounded like a great job, but policy is really what I want to do. So I've been thinking too, do I go back and get a second master's? Do I go to law school? I dated a lot of lawyers, and they're all like, you don't need a JD for what you want to do. I want to do advocacy. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm going to school all day, and then in the afternoons, I'm doing like either social media stuff or political stuff.
I think internally, like I attribute it to God, but like internally, like what your next path is. It's kind of like written within you. You know what I mean? Like it's always like the next step, like kind of reveals itself to you. So I think whatever you're going to do is going to be great. In the next like 10 years, like what do you feel like if I can just give you your way and looking at every single path that you want to,
what
does the next 10 years look like for you?
Marry a liberal Christian dude. Really important. Really hard to find. They're unicorns.
That's definitely rare.
Like, how can we love Jesus and human rights? Like, I don't get why it's so hard.
Right.
So many conservative guys here, or who, like, I've had guys pretend that they were liberal, and then like a couple months in, I'm like, I kind of knew, you know.
Sure.
But and then I'd say get either a job at the Ledge. The Ledge has been pay a lot, or working for like Disability Rights Texas, because our education policy is shit in Texas, and then our special education policy is even worse. So like in a lot of states, Medicaid is how we bill like OT, PT, FOP, and so that's why my kids were able to get such amazing services in Oregon. Because when you look at the per pupil funding in Texas compared to Oregon, it's really the same, but kids don't get those services here because we don't want to expend Medicaid because we're Texas. And so there's just the Department of Ed like audited Texas as a whole in 2018 and found that we were like blatantly not providing services to kids because we didn't want to pay for them. And as a state, like we know that we are underfunding SPED by $2 billion every year, or $4 billion every biennium. And we had a $37 billion surplus this last session, and we didn't give teachers raises. We didn't do anything for school funding. We didn't do anything for special ed funding, because our governor is pushing school vouchers and school choice. And so it's kind of been this thing where I'm really proud of the Democrats and the rural Republicans for coming together and saying, like, no, we're not going to vote on this. This is going to ruin in all other states. We've had them. They don't do good things. And, you know, they kind of push it as, oh, it's going to help our students of color and our students with disabilities. And we know that's not true. We know those are the last kids who actually get access to them. And so Governor Abbott kind of had stopgaps, like, I'm only going to sign over school funding if you give me vouchers. And he's just being a big baby. And we had 4 special sessions. So basically, like, we have a regular session, and then the governor can call a special session whenever he wants, but only about what he wants to call it on. And so we've had 4 special sessions, and 2 of them have been just about vouchers, and nothing happened. So we're just wasting taxpayer dollars. I could talk about it for a long time, because Texas is such a weird state because we do have so much power. And like, I don't know if you guys have been like hearing what happened with this woman Kate Cox, and the abortion stuff here. So so that, or Senate Bill 4 like was signed yesterday, and it's a really awful anti-immigration bill, basically like a show me your papers bill. So yeah, it's just, so basically my goal right now is I'm working with a woman. She is trying to turn House District 52 blue. It was held by this guy named James Tallarico, who's like amazing. He's the one that's like saying, he was a teacher. He's young. He's 34. He's probably going to be governor one day. Look him up. Like, he really is amazing. And so he was the rep of that district, and then he got gerrymandered out of it. And so now it's this very conservative woman whose husband is chief of staff for Ken Paxton. And so she got tons of money from our governor and all of that. But we're trying to flip it back to blue. And so I'm helping a woman on her campaign, and she's like the perfect woman for it. She was homeless and then in foster care, and then has worked in the jails and does a lot with like school to prison pipeline, and just like what that area needs and not just another rich white woman. And so basically, if I'm not at school, I'm helping her with her campaign, and the primary is in March. So
if you had a magic wand and you could fix anything within the special ed community or teaching system, what do you think are like the priority in that specific niche? Do you think?
I think it would be really training up our teachers, because here in Texas, like teacher turnover is bad. Special ed average teachers only last 5 years, and in Texas, you can do an alternative certificate, which basically means like you could have just got a bachelor's in anything and then take some online classes and get your teaching license, because we need teachers so bad. And that just puts more strain on the good teachers, because we're trying to help those teachers. And so like I was lucky that in Oregon, my district had a grant, and I had a mentor my first 2 years who was a special ed teacher and like was in the trenches with me. And that was after 2 years with a master's, like really specialized masters too. I still had that. So I feel very blessed that I had a lot of people who really supported me my first couple of years teaching in Oregon. I don't see that here. And you have a mentor teacher, but they're not paid anything extra. They're kind of the person like go down the hall like, hey, can you help me with this paperwork? Not like in Oregon, her job literally was just to be our mentor. She was paid a full salary. She had like 5 or 6 new teachers on her caseload, and that was her whole job. And so I think just, better teacher training and just respecting teachers. Like I knew that I was not going to be paid well when I got into it, but I think for me, like the lack of respect during COVID and we were like praised during COVID, and then we were used as pawns. It's like, oh, and here in Texas, it's like, oh, teachers are brainwashing our kids for like gender neutral this and that, and oh, they're like Anne Frank has been taken off the shelves here. Like there's just like craziness. But when I was in Portland, we would be rated on like how diverse like our library was, or if the graphics on our walls represented the students in our class. And here, every teacher has like a giant Christmas tree in their room. And when I'm like, well, what about Hanukkah, or what about these other things? People like kind of look at me like, oh, you're that white snowflake. And that's in Austin, where we are very liberal compared to other parts of Texas.
It's so funny because you've seen both ends of the spectrum. Oregon, Pacific Northwest is one of the most atheistic parts of the whole country, right? There's very few churches, very low like faith identifiableness, right? And then now you're in Texas, which is obviously Austin is more purple, but within the larger Texas community, it's entirely Christian.
Yeah, I mean, in Portland, we maybe did the Pledge of Allegiance like once a week. Here, you do the Pledge of Allegiance every day. Then the state pledge, because Texas has their own pledge. Yeah, I know. And then we have a moment of silence, and it's like this whole like 5-minute
thing to their chest as well. Like, everyone has a gun as well.
Actually, guns are not allowed in schools here, which is kind of crazy that you can have them everywhere else, but you can't have them in schools.
What's like the average class size of a special ed?
So I'm actually in a special program. I'm in an emotional disturbance program, and so right now I only have 1 student, and I have an assistant. But when I was teaching like life skills, I had 6 to 8, and based on the need of the students, I'd have like 2 to 3 assistants. And that was life skills was more autism, Down syndrome, like maybe cerebral palsy, other genetic disorders. It's really interesting because Oregon has a much higher rate of autism than the Pacific Northwest. New Jersey has the highest rate of autism, and then the Pacific Northwest. And so a lot of my training in Oregon was autism, and most of my class was usually autism and boys on the spectrum who are nonverbal. And here, a lot less autism and a lot more just like intellectual disability, which is this umbrella term. So that was just a big difference. I was kind of surprised about that. And there are some laws here that Texas is different. So in most states for an IEP, there's 13 categories. And Texas decided that dyslexia wasn't going to be one of the IEP qualifications, and it was going to be like its own services, like just weird things like that. Like I took sped law in grad school. Like I think it's super interesting, and Texas just was like, we're going to do our own thing. But
Texas is very interesting.
Insensitive question.
I do love Austin. Like Austin is a really cool city, and Austin has changed in the past 4 years a lot, kind of like any city. Like I haven't been back to Santa Monica in a while, but my dad's like, oh, it's so different. My dad's 75, so he's been in Santa Monica for a long ass time.
Mhm.
But it's like a lot of the big cities, sadly, like they're changing a lot, and there's some great things, but there's also some like, historic buildings that are being taken down for high rises, and
Right. Does the special ed community suffer from the exact same kind of nonsense as the Gen Pop, where like there's like a bullying, a heavy presence, or I don't know, is that insensitive to think like, do the Down syndrome kids like beat up with the CP kids and there's like a pecking order? Is that a thing?
No, I think because I'm self-contained, I have the kiddos who are the most impacted.
Okay.
So I think if maybe you are like in a resource inclusion class, which is like where the students maybe have a learning disability or like a speech impediment and they get a little extra support, they're like pulled to another class or someone pushes in. That might be the case, but I've never been in that setting. Like I've always been self-contained where my kids are clearly like have a disability. And I'd say at all the schools, they've actually been like very, other than my behavior kids, everyone loves them. Like my kiddo was CP, he was a 5th grader when I had him, and he was like king of the school. Everyone would be like, hi, like you see him coming, and he just like, same with an Oregon. Because my second year teaching in Oregon, I got really lucky and I had 4 kinders with Down syndrome. And 2 of them were Asian and had these little glasses, and they were just like, I want to eat them. They were just the cutest things ever. And so people would see me coming with them, and they'd be like,
Yeah.
I would say people respond differently when it's like the behavior kid. Like I've had kids with autism who, are really violent, like break windows. I as like a young teacher, I was on workman's comp because I threw at my back, like restraining a 5-year-old. And obviously a restraint is like the last thing you do, or like in my current job, I'm in an emotional disturbance room. So like this year I've been bit, I've had rocks thrown at me, I've been kicked, like all the things. And so it's a very different, there's like a different level of grace. Like the teachers see me in the hall, they're like, oh, I couldn't do your job. Or like I'm getting coffee and they're like, oh, you need coffee. But I would say it's like a lonelier job because I'm not like on a team. A lot of times, like I'm on my own island over here. I'm like with my kid, and that's what I'm doing. Like today was a half day, and I guess there was caroling after school that we were supposed to stay for, and I didn't know. And I was like, "Peace, I'm leaving."
I would have done the same thing, to be honest with you.
I mean, right? Like, who is it? Like, we are so ready for our break. And also, like I said, I'm a contract teacher, so I don't have to do some of that stuff. Like in my old job, when teaching was my identity, I was like probably the one leading the caroling. So I would say I think that now that I've separated my identity from teaching, I'm able to be a lot more hands off and like, oh, it's 3:00. I'm not going to stay till 6 to make some bulletin board, or like, I'm not going to be emailing parents at 8 p.m. Like I think I've had better boundaries, and I would say I'm a lot happier with those boundaries. But it's hard. Like as a special ed teacher, you do kind of feel like a martyr when you complain. Like a lot of times we don't get our lunches because there's just not another person to come into the room. Whereas like if a gen ed teacher didn't get their lunch, oh my goodness, like
Yeah.
So just things like that. And so that's why I really want to change that. There's a lot of organizations here that help families with kiddos with disabilities as a whole, but there's not a group that does like legislative stuff specifically for our lower incidence kids, because they're the kids that cost the most. They're the kids that need like the specialized teachers and the services and the and so yeah, that's what I want to do. I think like you said, what would like your dream be? Like my next 10 years would be find my liberal Christian husband and then do a job where like I'm really able to advocate, but advocate also in a spot where like I feel respected. Like I would say going down to the ledge, I say I'm a current teacher and I get a lot better response from people than, oh, I'm a former teacher. And so that is a blessing about being back in the classroom, is I was able to really use that when I was testifying. Because they can't be like, oh no, that's not what's happening. I'm like, no, this is what's happening right now. Like you think you're so far removed, and a lot of those people never step foot in like an elementary class unless they're a parent or something. And the interesting thing too about Texas politics is it's to be in the ledge or the Senate, the state, it's $7,200 a year is their like stipend. They're not paid like a full salary. So a lot of times it's independently wealthy people. And so I know that a lot of people are like, oh, we don't want politicians to have a huge salary, like make $200,000. I'm like, but then you're only getting people who can actually afford that. So there's a lot of lawyers and doctors. So then there's people like this James I was telling you about. He was a teacher, and I mean, luckily he's young and has a great following and has been able to do a lot of great fundraising. But it's like this angel woman that I'm working with, she works for some nonprofits. Like, how do you support yourself on $7,200 a year? And it's technically a part-time job, which it's not. Like I said, we've had 4 special sessions. They've been in session basically the entire year. And they do get paid more. Like when you're in session, you get paid a little bit more. It's more than $7,200. But it's just crappy, you know?
Yeah.
So
Jim, I think I found your new business. So Jim's always got some business, tech idea, app idea, whatever. And so you just brought up a really good point, Marissa. I think obviously we've all heard of Christian Mingle, right? I think we need to start liberal Christian Mingle.
We do.
Yeah. That's your idea. That's your South by Southwest Y Combinator.
There we go. I'm not trying to crap on Christian Mingle, but like a lot of it is like the guys who are like waiting for marriage still, or like in like purity groups and like just kind of awkward. Like nothing wrong with it. Like I totally respect that, but like I want someone who like loves Jesus, but like also is in the world. I'm not saying they need to be like
high school. Yeah, that's what you want. The guy that had sex parties in high school, but then he's also like, like you need the best of both worlds.
Right? No.
The Reformed Christian.
Maybe he didn't throw them. Maybe he partook in them.
Okay, yeah, that's what we need. That's the real guy.
There's a good group called If You Know, and it's ran by this one girl, and I swear she does like meetups in Boston. She does it in SoCal too. And like basically it's a bunch of like Christian singles that like come to one group, and like they're pre-screened, and it's pretty awesome. I'll
have to look them up.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's really awesome. And it's kind of like that idea. It's like it's really in the realms of that idea.
Okay.
And it does attract more liberal Christians I've seen. So maybe.
Maybe I'll get a unicorn.
Perhaps. I mean, shoot. Do you want to introduce your dog since
this is Hubcap. I didn't name him. It was a name like, hey, say hi.
He's such a sweetie.
He is such a sweetie, yeah. So this is his little drag bag. So he kind of like runs around. I mean, he drags her. He looks like a little seal in it, and he has a little wheelchair.
So cute.
Yeah, he's really cute. I started his own Instagram for him because he is just so cute. He's a little love bug. I never thought I'd have a Chihuahua. Like I always thought I'd have bigger dogs.
Right.
But I couldn't say no to him. Huh.
Well, he's the first honorary dog guest on the Alumni.
You're so special. Oh,
You're so special. You made the pod.
He's the mascot of the pod.
I talk to him like a teacher. My friends are like, Marissa, I'll be like, use your words. And they're like, he's not going to talk back.
Right.
He's a smart dog. You can tell him.
He is.
We'll go into our set segments now.
Okay.
I'm going to play the very cool, the very fresh.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
Heck yeah.
Feeding the Ducks.
Bump it, Jim. Feeding the Ducks. Best soundtrack to any pod ever. Yeah.
See, do you want to do the rapid fire?
Yeah, let's go through the lightning round. So this is going to bring you back into the Santa Monica mindset, basically, with these 6 questions. Okay. First one is going to be best off-campus lunch spot.
Oh, El Pollo Loco.
Oh,
okay.
The dollar menu, and then you get the salsa from the area, and like you basically made yourself like a salad with a dollar salad.
Right. Someone just said they have the best fries too. I'm like, damn, I've never tried El Pollo Loco fries, but.
And there's one El Pollo Loco in like Dallas here, so when I'm in Dallas, I'm like always like El Pollo Loco.
Right.
It's a familiar face.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. 2, hardest class you took in high school.
Probably what was his name? He was one of the football coaches. It was Algebra 2, advanced or whatever. And I just remember he wouldn't let you go to the bathroom, and I hated that. I was like, this is such a man thing to not let you go to the bathroom. So every time you went to the bathroom, you got like 1 point taken off your final grade. And so I ended up getting a doctor's note. So like that's bullshit. Like,
oh my gosh.
So that was kind of hard.
I have a functioning bladder and I'm a normal human being. Like what the heck?
I feel like men, like it's always male teachers who do that. And I get it. Like people would be gone for like 20 minutes, like just walking around campus. But yeah, that was a hard class.
Interesting. Okay. Question 3. Which year of high school would you most like to relive if you could wake up tomorrow?
Ooh. I mean, senior year was great, even though I graduated early. I think junior year? I don't know. They're all great. Like I know it sounds like, I think freshman year, it was just a rude awakening. Like there's a lot of things where I was like, this is actually happening, you know? Like homecoming my freshman year, like we on cheer we did it, but I remember being like, oh, people were doing that? Like just shocked. But I was shocked because, you know, I had the same boyfriend at that point for like 2 years. I don't know why I was shocked by some of those things, but yeah, I'd say senior year, even though I graduated early.
Okay, senior year.
For sure.
Final answer. I like it. Here's a good one. Best restroom on campus to take a dump.
Ooh.
This one gets most people. This is a tough one for everyone, I think. But.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the bathroom that's in the like the chemistry building.
Ooh.
Only because that was where our cheer coach was, and like a lot of us would store our crap in that room. But I don't remember where like an actual bathroom. Like I can't picture a bathroom door.
Sometimes I never went to the bathroom in high school, all 4 years. I'm like,
I don't know I remember walking around, going to the bathroom with my iPod in. I remember listening to Fergie's Glamorous.
Man,
and smelling Glamorous out. Like it was like a Friday and it was my cheer uniform, and I remember that, but I don't remember actually going to the bathroom.
You just answered the next question. It's what song from a high school era is still on your iPod? Delicious. Okay.
Yeah. Or the Black Eyed Peas, the one that came out our senior year. That it's gonna be a good night.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna make that our intro.
Like every wedding you go to, they come out to that one. It's like, you know, it's
Connor
just a good.
Promised, I'm gonna put him on blast. Connor Vance promised to do a violin rendition of "Tonight's Gonna Be a Good Night."
Love that.
He hasn't delivered. We gotta like clip this out.
Well, I know Kel was on the show, and she did viola, so you got to get Connor and Kel together, and they could do.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get Connor back
viola.
on.
Yeah.
Loki, his episode might have cut out, so we got to get him back on anyway. But yeah, he owes us some hot violin action. For sure.
I'm ready. If he could do Glamorous too, that would be fabulous.
Okay, we'll contract him out for all of this. Last question: who was the hottest teacher at SAMO?
Oh, definitely the sophomore year chem teacher. What was his name?
Oh, Mr. Moore? Is that who you're talking about? He had a mohawk.
I remember. Oh yes, because everyone was obsessed with him. I remember, like all the cheer girls were obsessed with him.
He was good.
Yeah,
he was a cool dude. He was
He was cool, and he ended up marrying the like gov teacher.
No way.
The one who did like our senior steering.
That's some drama right there.
Yeah.
We'll have to get him on the podcast, Jim. Mr. Moore.
Right?
Have a podcast. Let's confront him about this.
Who was the hottest female teacher on campus?
Oh, Miss Reardon. She was the physics teacher. She was smoke show.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. But
wow.
Yeah. Who do you think we should bring on the podcast next? Anyone from high school you still talk to, Marisa?
Ariella, one of the triplets.
Okay.
Yeah.
She was here actually for work. She just got engaged, and she like runs the like medical school at UCLA. So pretty badass.
That's
sick. And maybe you could get all three on there because they all do very different things. Like Candace is an SLP, Justin does some travel stuff. So you know,
we can have up to 10 guests on the pod, Jim.
Yeah, the whole family. I mean, their sister graduated the year after. You know, so you could have the four of them.
Heck yeah.
You know,
four siblings all at once. That's crazy.
Dude, that's wild. We can handle it, Jim. If anyone could do it, we could do it.
We can do it for sure. It's definitely possible. The last segment we leave to you to basically give a little message to our class and any viewers of this podcast.
Other high school students. Anything.
Other high school students. Anything you want. Anything you want to plug too. If you want people to follow you or whatever. The floor is yours. And
I would just say, if you are in a blue state and you are looking at 2024, worried about democracy, look into supporting some smaller races in Texas or other states, because we have like the one I'm working on. She's a House district. Like obviously, we're probably not going to flip governor in 3 years or flip. Ted Cruz is up right now. I don't think we're going to flip it, sadly, but there are House districts that we can flip. And I just think it's a better use of your money than giving it to your really, really liberal person, or even to Biden. I mean, I'm going to vote for him, but,
He's going to be dead in like 2 months. That dude's like 95 years old. Like, why are we paying Biden? That dude's like,
okay.
By now. He's 200 years old.
Trump again. Like, it's the same thing again, you know? Ugh.
He falls asleep during like his speeches. I know.
Yeah,
which is sad.
He had speech impediment growing up. A lot of people don't know that, and so like people will think he's having like an aneurysm. I'm like, he has a speech impediment, you asshole.
Yeah, he definitely does. That's been known throughout his political career.
Right. He had a brain surgery a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's a smart guy.
Make money. Check out Angel Carroll. For Texas, check out James Tallarico. He's seriously gonna be president one day. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, on that note, it's been an absolute pleasure. Your story is amazing and ever developing still, and we're excited to keep up with you.
And my unicorn, I'll let you guys know if I find him.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
And next time you're on, you can bring him on.
Okay. Me and Hubcap and the unicorn. Sounds good.
Yeah. 13 more years. We'll do it. Yeah.
On that note, this is the Alumni Podcast, and we are signing off.
Later.
Peace.
I was trying to SM, but I can't.